Good morning, everyone. Welcome along to another edition of Landmark's Compliance Corner webinars. For those of you that don't know, we do record these every month, and then they are posted onto our YouTube channel, which is just Landmark Estate Agency Services. If you type that into YouTube, you should be able to find it. And we just try to focus on different sections of the regulations, just to try and break it down into sort of easy to understand bits, and just to provide useful information for you all as well. Now, it shouldn't take much more than 20 minutes. It is recorded as well, and we will send the link out to everybody that signed up for it afterwards. So if you wanted to share it with your colleagues and things, or use it for staff training, then by all means you can do that. Everybody is going to be on mute as well, just to prevent any background noise. But if you do have any questions thereafter, the contact details will be on the very last slide if you wanted to get in touch with us. So without further ado, we'll get started. So as it's quite obvious from the title, what we're going to be focusing on today is what to do when HMRC come knocking. And this is in reference to the anti-money laundering regulations, of course. So yes, so that's what we're going to be looking at today. So just to give you a little bit of an overview, you may be aware that back in 2017, the fourth money laundering directive was brought in. And that was quite a big change, to be honest, because it brought in that agents had to verify purchasers as well as sellers, which hadn't been in before. So all of a sudden now that suddenly doubled your work, having to verify both parties to the transaction, as well as auctioneers having to verify bidders as well. Earlier this year, they did, I think it was back in May time, they brought in an updated version of that guidance, just to kind of rehash what they'd already said. They only sort of changed the wording. There wasn't anything in terms of change of what you had to do. But you may or may not be aware that in January, there is going to be a fifth money laundering directive coming in. So it just shows in the fact in that short space of time that they're already bringing in another change, that they are really clamping down on this. I mean, you may have seen that earlier this year, a big agency was fined quite publicly, and it was £250,000. They do go out and fine agents quite sort of heavily, and that's why we wanted to do this, really, to try and give you that sort of heads up about what happens when they do turn up, and what you can do just to make sure that obviously everything would go smoothly with that inspection, really. So hopefully that will sort of, if you watch this, it will give you that a bit more peace of mind about what it is you're currently doing, and if you do need to change anything, just in case. So HMRC, they'll 95% of the time, they tend to write to you or call you to let you know the date and time of the inspection, who your officer is going to be, and who needs to be present on the day. They will also give you some information as to what they want to go through as well. One of our clients recently had an inspection from HMRC, and they actually contacted them by phone, and they gave the agent just 1 week's notice. So that's just an example there of sort of how short notice they can give. The owner was on holiday at the time, so they did negotiate a new date. So there was a little bit of leeway given there as well, but it just depends on circumstances. That might not be the case for everybody. It could depend on what the inspector, what their sort of opinion is of it as well. They could also just turn up on your doorstep unannounced. It's rare, but it does happen, especially if there is a cause for concern, which generally comes from a complaint against you. And in the event that this happens, the officer will introduce themselves, and they'll explain the reason for the visit too. So our client's inspection lasted 3 hours, but it can take up to 5 hours depending on the size of the business and the thoroughness of the officer. So using our client as an example again, the first thing they wanted to see was their AML policy. They also asked for 10 historic completed sales transactions in the last 12 months and 10 current sales where the offer had been accepted. They normally ask for 20, but it may be less. So if we advise you, you have 20 files you've pre-selected, and obviously you can go with the best ones, of course. But in some cases, rarely, but it does happen, the officer may want to select them themselves at random. So this is why you need to ensure that all of them are in good order. They also asked our client about any ongoing high risk cases they had and to see these too. So again, we just stress the importance of making sure you do your enhanced due diligence where you identify any risk or suspicion of money laundering. HMRC will want to interrogate these files to ensure you followed the necessary procedures. As well as making sure the money laundering officer is there on the day, HMRC will also want to speak with the owner and the director, the senior managers, as well as other members of the staff. So it is imperative that they all know who the money laundering officer is, where your policies and procedures are kept, and what exactly these are for your company as well. So, as an example, the advice they gave our client was to order land registry checks, as they are the best way to identify beneficial owners, or if a mortgage statement cannot be obtained. Also, to make more detailed notes on the risk assessment over and above just tick boxes, to expand on the circumstances of the transaction and why that client was deemed low or high risk. The notes will generally outline how the day went, what files were looked at, where procedures were followed, and where they weren't, and so forth. You will then have the opportunity to comment on their notes, which will be taken into consideration when they look at what action to take, if they do think there is an action that's needed to be taken. And if they did, there's a number of actions that they can take as well. It just depends on their findings. They may simply feedback some general advice on where you could improve things if they find you are complying with regulations. However, if their findings suggest that you aren't meeting your obligations in terms of the anti-money laundering regulations, then they will issue a penalty fine. I'll talk about this more in a moment. But as I'm sure you're aware, HMRC have started to publicise the fines issued to agents over the last 6 months. Sometimes it does go public, sometimes not, but we are seeing that in property industry news. We've seen some pretty hefty fines handed out, but it's not just the financial penalty, it's your reputation too, of course, and it is really stressful to go through that process as well. Our client actually asked the officer doing their inspection what their fine would have been if their files had not been in order, and he quoted £20,000 for the size of their business and transaction levels. So you really can't afford to get it wrong. There's also a chance you could get your registration suspended or even cancelled, in which case you couldn't trade. Or they could prohibit you or a member of staff from having any managerial input in the business at all if they find you at fault. It can happen, but it is a really worst case scenario. You'll then receive formal notification in writing about the outcome of the inspection and what action HMRC are looking to take, which you can then dispute any aspects of this. The officer will take these views under consideration, and there have been cases where decisions have been overturned. We're not saying they will, but if you have a valid case, then there is a chance, of course. Following this, you'll receive official notification of their final decision, which you can, of course, accept or you can appeal it. In terms of the fines for non-compliance, now I'm not going to scare you with all the figures today, but I'm sure you're all well aware of how hefty the fines can be. And of course, they depend on the size of your business, the number of clients you have, and how many breaches HMRC find you guilty of. From the 25th of July last year, HMRC also introduced an admin charge in addition to the penalty itself. The details of the penalty administration charge will be included in their notifications to you following an inspection, and these can also run into the thousands as well. HMRC will detail the figures of the penalty fine within their written notification and what these are for. They will also show you if a reduction has been applied. For example, if it's a first-time offence, your fines can be reduced by up to 50%. But if it's your third offence, then you'd see no reduction in this at all. It would be good to have some sort of checklist in place in your agency so you can ensure you're ticking all the boxes. To help you, we've put a high-level one together here, just as an example of the things that you need to ensure that you have in place. So it's important to ensure that everybody in your agency knows who the money laundering officer is or who the nominated officer is as well. And you do need to have deputies just in case the money laundering officer is ever absent as well. And again, ensure that the staff know who the deputy is too. You then need to ensure you have the correct policy and procedures in place and that they are being followed. All the staff need to be aware of what these are and where these documents can be accessed at any time. You also need to have a risk assessment in place as well. So this needs to outline what you would class as a normal risk client in your agency and what you would class as a high risk client, and then what sort of level of check you would do depending on each circumstance. The reason it is in a risk-based way is because every agency, each customer that you deal with is different. If you're operating in the centre of London, your risk level is going to be totally different to that of somebody operating in a market town where they meet every single client they deal with. The average property value is less than 300,000, and it's not many second home purchases. So that type of situation is much lower risk than in the City of London, where maybe everything they deal with is abroad and the property value is in the millions. So this is why each agency has to have a risk assessment unique to them, and then your procedures should reflect that risk level as well. Your property files need to be up to date and you need to show a clear audit trail. Identifying beneficial owners is high on HMRC's checklist, and the best way to do this is to purchase the title documents from Land Registry. For those of you that don't currently use our system, we have full integration with Land Registry as well. So these checks are really quick and easy, but I'll come on to that in a second. Conducting a risk assessment on each beneficial owner is another thing they will look for, as this process is key to helping you decide whether they are low, medium, or high risk and the type of due diligence you'll carry out. As you know, if it's low, you can do your standard due diligence, but if it's medium to high risk, then you'll want to be carrying out your enhanced due diligence checks. You need to ensure you have a clear audit trail of when your checks were carried out, as HMRC will look to see if these were done before instruction, which is when they should be done, and we advise this as best practice. But in most cases, as long as it's been done before the property has been marketed, then you should be okay. A staff training is vital, and you may need to show what this consists of. Also, the officer may speak to any number of staff members during the inspection, so they all need to know their obligations when it comes to complying with the regulations. So if you've watched this and thought, actually we could do with a little bit of help, or, you just want to know how to do this better, then that is what here at Landmark we are here for. We have helped thousands of agents to stay on the right side of compliance, and touch wood, to date, all of our clients have passed HMRC inspections as well. So that really does speak volumes to help give you that peace of mind. The reason for this is because we have different levels of solutions as well, that it just depends entirely on your needs. So this is our compliance in a box product. We have online electronic AML checks that are pay as you go, that automate the way that you verify clients, saving you a lot of time from chasing down manual documents. And then we also, taking it one step further, have an integrated API so that we can plug our checks directly into your back office system. Taking it one step further, we also have a fully managed outsourced solution whereby we do all your checks for you. So you literally wouldn't have to do anything in terms of verifying clients. We have a team that can verify everybody for you, and we know how to do it obviously to the letter of the law as well. So it's just giving you complete peace of mind that every client has been checked to a high standard, and you know that nothing has been missed then as well. So if this is something you want a little bit more information about, then my contact details will be on the next slide, but please do feel free to get in touch with us, and we can go through that with you. But whichever solution you take from us, we give you full training, and we give you ongoing support from a dedicated account manager as well. We give you access to template policies as well as template risk assessment, because again, it's so important to make sure that you have that paperwork in place. So we do that just for our clients. We give you those templates as well, and if you've already got yours, that's fine. You can just look at ours to adapt, to make sure that there's nothing missing there. So we do that for our clients, and as you're probably aware, for those of you that have been on previous webinars, we're always doing things like this just to help agents to better understand what is needed, and if there are any changes in the regulations as well, we're always on the lookout for that to keep our clients informed. And we do provide a free online training course as well on the regulations for our clients, and it's basically a quiz where at the end of it, once the staff has completed it, they will get a certificate, so that you can sign off to say, my staff have been trained on the guidance as well, and you've got evidence of that too. So thank you very much once again for everybody for attending today. I hope that was quite useful for you. My details are here on the slide. If you do have any questions or you want to know more about our products, then please don't hesitate to get in touch. Thank you everybody, and hope you have a great day.